Welcome to another episode of the Health Tech Horizons podcast.
This podcast is dedicated to individuals and organizations who embrace the health tech horizons on a mission to improve outcomes, elevate the quality of life, and create new frontiers of innovation. Join us as we reimagine healthcare together.
My name is Anna Maria Palucci, and my special guest today is Bruno Larvol. Bruno is a true visionary and an outstanding entrepreneur who has dedicated his career to creating innovative solutions that aim to revolutionize the field of oncology diagnosis and treatment. He is the CEO and founder of Larvol, a competitive intelligence company that focuses on immuno-oncology, delivering data and software to some of the most prominent pharmaceutical, biotech, and healthcare companies. With a unique approach that leverages virtual reality and remote work, Bruno and his team at Larvol are paving the way for a new era of healthcare innovation. Join us as we dive deeper into Bruno's journey, the work at Larvol, and the exciting future of healthcare data and analytics in oncology and beyond. Thank you so much for joining. We are so excited to have you as a guest and Larvol.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate the time. You have done some really exciting things. You have expertise and knowledge in fields like finance and banking and artificial intelligence, big data, programming, you name it. And you're also known as the CEO of the Metaverse. And in addition, I see that you are vested in working on cryptocurrencies and cryptangible assets such as diamonds. So a lot of very interesting things.
A general comment first, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, I miss a memo about the need to be focused on one thing, I guess.
I love it.
And first, you know, one of the most common advice in business and in life is focus on something and try to become the best at that one thing. And I'm doing all of these different things. And so there's an underlying theme behind it. However, I acknowledge that it is a little bit certainly diverse, the different endeavors I have. And I guess my only excuse is that when I look at what Elon Musk is doing, it's even more distributed between so many different things. So if he can manage, I don't know, I didn't count, 7 companies in so many different areas, hopefully I can manage 3 in various areas as well. So that's my point about the diversity of focus and so on. And to me, what's behind it is sometimes, if you think about a kid, all right, they're curious, they're adventurous, they follow their interest at a particular time. Now, at some point, we need to grow up, I understand, but the joy of being able to follow your curiosity, and whether it's in AI, in generative AI, ChatGPT on one hand, the Metaverse on the other hand, crypto, which is another area I'm invested and active in, and of course, oncology data and healthcare data, which is my main business. That's I would say, a privilege that I had in my career.
Yes, and you're very well known for being very brave and adventurous, just like you said. And so I heard you talk about things that didn't work so well as you expected. And I can see that you're very proud and excited about the things that work. So before we get a little deeper into Larvol and getting to understand what Larvol does, I would love to get to know a little bit about you, Bruno, just the human behind the persona, and what was that shaped your dreams, your aspirations, and sort of the way you make personal and business decisions.
Yes, and that's a lot of things. I'm gonna try to introduce myself as human first, and then maybe we can get to the second question. So I was born in France. I make the joke that I was assigned French at birth, but now I already self-identify as American. And from early on, I knew deep down that I wasn't French.
Mm.
Despite the accent, I felt that I belonged to America. I love France. I love to go back to France. Maybe I'll be buried in France. I don't know. But I wanted very, very much. It was never even a decision I made. Oh, I think I'm going to immigrate to the US or I'm become American. It was obvious to me from the beginning that that I was supposed to be American,
That's
and
it.
that yes. So I'm making a little joke out of it, but there's some truth to that. And to me, the energy, the entrepreneurial spirit, the ambition of America is always something that fascinated me.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because I always felt like I belonged in Canada, and I literally know the feeling. So that's interesting that you would say that. So tell us more a little bit about sort of what motivates you. How did you start Larval? And I know you have tremendous history with IBM, but just curious a little bit more about your
Sure.
genesis story.
The Genesis story. Yes, yes. So I started my career after my after business school in New York City, working with IBM. And at the time, IBM was doing a lot of interesting things about data and healthcare, and it was called Deep Blue. They won chess against Kasparov, and I think they won also at Jeopardy against Ken Jennings. And they were looking at applying it to healthcare. And later on, it became Watson. So I was there at the beginning from the angle of services and consulting and helping think through these super interesting topic. I left IBM to start my own company. I got my boss to invest in it. And after 2 years, I got fired. It didn't work out. Now, the company ultimately failed, but it was it was a very interesting first experience into entrepreneurial activity, even if it didn't work out. The company was to aggregate a database of bioinformatics data. It was called Cognia. So then I had to decide, what do I do? And I started a little consulting firm, essentially, to advise biotech and pharma. And then over the years, I realized that there was an amazing pool of talent globally that you could tap into if you didn't need to be in the same office. And I found amazing talent, MDs, PhDs, MBAs in India, in Latin America, in Europe, all over the world. And so way, way before COVID, I thought, you don't need an office. You can really create a tight team without being in an office. And that's how Larvol grew over the years. I never got any investment, so it grew organically into 150 incredible professionals. And over the years, we evolved from doing services, consulting, to pharma, to selling data and software. So a SaaS company, software as a service, in particular, the kind of software that is the toughest, I would argue, kind of software, which is softwares where the data in the software is also needs to be provided with the software. And so data-centric software. And that's our niche. And we've been very, very blessed with that business over the years.
Very cool. So I had a look a little bit at the website, and I could see that there's a big breadth of information, also delivery modes. So you have anything from, so market intelligence overall, but conference planning, key opinion leaders monitoring, and biomarker and companion diagnostics, as well as oncology study, the trial study data. And I see that you're constantly thinking creatively about new things that are needed. But what I've heard you say is that your vision, your endpoint is to develop something similar to a Google map of oncology, diagnosis, and treatment. So I think that's very exciting. Can you tell me a little bit about your vision and the challenges and also the things that are really helping prompt you to do that?
So oncology is such an important field. And number one, we all know many people affected by the disease, including cases of young people. And it's really, really, there's so much unmet medical needs.
Mhm.
And it seems that each time we solve one type of cancer a little bit, there are other problems coming down the road. And ultimately, the needs in oncology seems to me to be huge. So I have a personal interest in that field. I think there's a big impact to be have in oncology. The other interesting thing about oncology is that it's a very unique disease. In some ways, it's a disease of information.
Yeah.
It's actually ourselves
Mm-hmm.
who don't get the memo, don't get the message, and start replicating the wrong way. It's like if you take a copy of a copy of a copy on a photocopy machine, at some point you cannot read and you misunderstand the words. So the DNA of our cells go rogue, essentially. So the enemy in cancer is us. That's what makes it so hard. So it's a disease of information, and it's a disease against us,
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, fighting our own body. So this is why it's both so important, so hard, and so worth pursuing it. So what we're doing at Larvol, our strategic project, we do many things, again, having to do with software, data, and healthcare. But the strategic project we're working on is to build that map, that Google map, yes, in oncology. But we're doing it in a very interesting way and unique way, which is to say, there've been so much published about oncology, public data that you can find, but that public data needs to be cleaned up, curated, organized, processed in order to patch together all of these pieces of the puzzle to create the Google map of oncology. So what's unique about us at Larvol is that we love two things that usually people don't love together. We love tech. We love natural language processing. We love database. We love software. We love Chat GPT. We love AI. But
Mm-hmm.
we also love curation of data. And usually, people who love one don't love the other. It's rare, I think, to have people who love the things that are so different in some way. So that's our superpower. We genuinely love both sides of this. And so we can put great curated data and the kind of data that needs to be curated forever. Some of our data set, it's like the, here in San Francisco, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge. When you finish painting in one direction, it's time to start painting in the other direction. It's the same with many of our data set. It requires a lot of expert curation, but we love it. And we love applying tech and increasingly AI to that data set to build, yes, the Google map of oncology.
Very cool. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have a very packed question for you, but let me start. There's a lot of talk about general medical artificial intelligence and creating a medicine AI kind of engine. And there's some things are moving right now. They're happening. So if you can tell me a little bit about how does Larval relate to that? Where does that fit in relation to that, and what's the process, and also where you are with it. And also, in addition, I wanted to say that personally, I find Larval to be, and just the solutions at Larval to be almost as a sanity check for physicians and for clinicians and for medical organizations and healthcare organizations in general, because there's a lot of hype about AI, and I love AI. Everything AI, it's because it's just the opportunity is huge. But as we know, there's many challenges. And there's many things that are not accurate. There's bias. There's ways in which the models are built that can create trouble down the line. So I feel like having systems like Larval that it allows you to manipulate data and look at it yourself and make sense of it in parallel with an AI decision could also be a way to use the data. Is that correct? And how do you feel about all those questions?
So first, I'm extremely positive about AI, about AI applied to healthcare, about AI applied to oncology data. And I don't think that AI is going to kill us. I understand that some people are worried, and in a way, it's such a tsunami of change coming our way. If you try ChatGPT, you understand
Yeah.
that I understand why people are worried. They should, in some ways. The impact on society is extreme. So we should be concerned. We should be wary. We should look at it. I think ultimately AI is going to have a huge positive impact net on society. But there haven't been a technology in the world, in the history, I'm being dramatic a little bit, as generative AI. I mean, AI has been around for 40 years. AI used to be the joke that it was the technology of the future, and it will always be. For 40 years, people have worked on AI, and it was gradual progress. It didn't really succeed, and all of a sudden, it succeeded with a very powerful computer, graphical card computer, and it started to do amazing things. And what happened over the last few weeks, not even months, weeks,
Yes.
is that generative AI, ChatGPT in particular, but the other generative AI, exploded. Like no technology has ever exploded before. It never happened that a technology went from 0 to 100 million users in days or weeks. It never happened.
Right.
So it's extraordinary. And now, a few days ago, so I've got a team working on generative AI. So generative AI is both textual, ChatGPT, or it's also visual. Think about Midjourney, for example, or Stable Diffusion. You say a word and it creates out of nothing a new art for that word. So generative AI is exciting. However, there are two big use cases in some way. There are use cases where the stakes are low. For example, if I say, hey, generative AI, create a poem about my hometown, which I did ask ChatGPT to do that. Very easy. It's amazing. Does very well. But the stakes are not very high. If one strophe of the poem is not great, nobody is going to die or be upset. But if you summarize commentaries from, let's say, Twitter experts about a data disclosure in cancer, which is something we did last week, by the way, using ChatGPT. And if there's anything wrong, well, that's very bad.
Yes.
Well, if we're a physician, then they cannot. So you cannot be wrong. And when the stake is so high, it's a little bit of a different story. So last week, actually, for me, was a disappointment about ChatGPT. ChatGPT did not live up to my expectations last week in that particular use case. So it's going to take some time. I still think that the hype is justified for generative AI, but in areas which are called high-stake area, you cannot. The technical term is your AI cannot hallucinate. In my pharma customers are saying, "Well, Bruno, that's exciting that you're investing in AI, but is your AI gonna hallucinate?" Meaning see things that don't exist because it connects the wrong dots in a pattern, and all of a sudden it says that if you take a lot of orange juice while I don't know, adding horseradish to it, it's going to cure your cancer. I doubt that's the case, by the way. But so the point is that in high stake areas, generative AI or AI in general is going to have to prove itself. And what it's going to take is actually, I call it the wasabi approach, very small, very strong, taking a very narrow use case, cancer, or even within cancer, a very narrow part of cancer, and proving that an AI can be trained to do the job, as opposed to the huge amount of data and very general questions that ChatGPT is trained to answer.
Yeah. And it's very interesting because I heard you talk about gene mutations and how variety can be very distracting from being able to pull the right insights, because it depends on how relevant and generalizable that variety is or variation. So, that goes into play into the whole conversation about biomarkers and how do we pull data? How do we analyze it to make decisions? And again, how does AI learn and what do we need to feed in, how to build it? So in addition to all these questions, there's another ambition that you have, which is making data 3D in the metaverse. And so I know you've started with it, you've had a couple of attempts, but I know you did not give up that thought. And I think it's very interesting. So what do you think needs to happen in order for you to build at this completely new level, which is beyond AI, into the metaverse?
So I like sometimes to be contrarian and talk about the failures, or they're not even failures. We haven't succeeded yet, as they say, right? So so here's what we did. So 3 years ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you got to try the Oculus headset. It's a big deal. Maybe it's like the iPhone moment to make virtual reality reality." I tried it. I used it. Say, "Oh, that's cool. Here's an idea. How about if we visualize in 3D cancer data to find patterns in it?" So we teamed up with a group of super smart young people at Caltech, a company called Virtualytics, and we worked with our data set and our engineers to create a big cube of data in 3 dimensions with visualization of cancer data. And then it was extraordinary. I tell you, we would put the headset on, and let's see, where's my headset? So we would put the headset on, and you would essentially swim in the data. You could see all of the data around you. You would have a really nearly physical sense of the data. And we went and we tried to apply AI to organize that cloud of data so that we could see patterns in the data.
That's amazing. I wish I was.
It was extraordinary. Actually, in my Metaverse office, we still have one of these beautiful cube of data that is on a bench there that you can see and expand and check out. It's incredible. Now, so we looked for patterns, and we didn't find any. It failed. The thing I can tell you is that we couldn't get it to work yet.
Yes.
Now, I think it's going to work, but we paused on that. And it was a beautiful adventure. It was an investment. It was a worthwhile investment. We didn't find the pattern. We didn't find the secret door to unlocking using virtual reality, powerful insight from cancer data. But we figured out something else that ended up being terrific for us. We figured out that when you put a headset on and you can work with your colleagues in a virtual environment, and you can create relationships. You can create working environment. You can sit around a table with a whiteboard and brainstorm about ideas in a way that you cannot on Zoom. In other words, after so many years of working remotely, we were not remote anymore. We had an office. We meet as avatar, I understand, in our virtual office. And then I decided to make it an extreme business experiment in some way, which is to run my company for 1 year completely from the metaverse, which was another wonderful adventure, a success, and something that I had no idea would happen. I mean, I certainly did not expect that at all in my business journey.
No, that's very cool. And I really hope that one day I get to witness how that looks and how that feels and maybe share with our audience. But I wanted to ask you about the metaverse. Since we understand now where it started and where it is. Do you see healthcare going into the metaverse? And if so, what would be the main use cases and what would be the factors to promote it in the next, let's say, how many years?
I'm adjusting my on-brand cap here.
I have to
tiger.
say,
Yes.
for Tigress, yes, that is another question that I have for you about marketing, but I'm going to leave that for later.
Yes, I have to be on brand by law. I have to
Right.
wear my signature tiger hat.
I was kind
Um,
of disappointed that you didn't have the Larval glasses. I was hoping you're going to pull those.
yes, 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 yes. What was your question again?
Yes, the metaverse and where it's going, healthcare in the metaverse.
Yes, yes. So here's another story. So I'm at that big cancer conference in Chicago. It's called ASCO.
Uh-huh.
And I've got that friend of mine in the industry that I'm trying to sell my Larvol services to, my database. And say, oh, I don't know. Our products are incredible, but he was not in the mood. All right.
Okay.
He said, I don't know. What I want to talk about the metaverse, Bruno. I want to talk about the metaverse.
Yeah.
Let's do because he knew I spent a year in the metaverse and say, oh, let's do a project in the metaverse. I couldn't get him to focus on my project.
I mean, the metaverse is so much cooler
he
than
was
any
he
topic.
was stuck on this idea of the metaverse.
Yeah.
And so say, okay, well, we're going to do a pilot together in the metaverse. So what could we do? Well, what we wanted to do is what's called an advisory board
Mhm.
between that pharma company and its doctors' advisors to help advise on development of new drugs. Because the problem with Zoom and doctors is that if you put a bunch of doctors on Zoom, but not in the same room. I love doctors. I'm married to a doctor. I love doctors, but they don't pay attention because they're busy. They have their patient, and they're happy to participate to advisory board with pharma, but up to a point.
Mhm.
So if you put them on Zoom, they don't pay attention. They're not engaged. They turn off their video. If they have their video on, they probably have their phone on the side and they're not really listening. So the idea was, well, if we put them with a headset on, they have to focus. They're
Yeah.
stuck in the metaverse. All of their senses are taken
Yeah.
by the headset, right? And so we did an experiment, not with doctors, but with maybe 10 people in that pharma. And it didn't work either.
Mm.
Well, it sort of worked, but not enough for them to do it. And then I realized one thing: as much as I love pharma is going to be very conservative for
Mhm.
many reasons. Number one, they're big. They
Mhm.
need the authorization of a bunch of people to do things, but also there's a lot of compliance issue,
Mhm.
right? It's a very regulated industry with high stake with any misstep from a regulatory standpoint. So that's the problem. They decided that, it was not ready for the kind of use case they had. So pharma loves, they want to follow the new trends, whether it's AI or the metaverse, but they are going to be very deliberate
Yes.
in doing real applications.
Yes.
So it's a little bit, there's a bit of a tension between, they want to be on top, the top management say, hey, what are we doing in ChatGPT? What is our generative AI strategy? What are we doing with the metaverse, the blockchain? But in terms of doing things, they're very deliberate.
Mhm.
And since I have so many friends in the industry, I'm not going to say slow. I
Although
would say
sometimes need a
deliberate,
term. Yeah.
deliberate, you know.
Deliberate is
Uh,
good though, because like you said, the stakes are very high. But there have to be people out there like yourself, Bruno, who go and pave the way and define things and bring them to a point where the deliberate decision makers can vet it and say yes. So, I mean, it's interesting, but I want to ask you, you talked a little bit about courage and also about more than anything else, I think curiosity. So what motivates you to really go after your interests and what keeps you, I mean, a lot of people would kind of give up, if I mean, I don't like to fail. So if I fail once, I feel heartbroken and devastated and I have to work on getting back on track. I do. But I'm saying as generally people have a hard time with that. You just seem so nonchalant about it. So what is it, or maybe nonchalant is not the term, but it not as affected. So what keeps you on this path?
so I don't like to fail either.
Okay.
But I have failed a lot.
And succeeded a lot.
And
Yeah.
succeeded a lot, of course. Thank
Yeah.
you. And most of our failures in life are secret, right? It's like, oh, we don't talk about it. Now, the reason why I'm I'm more and more confident talking about the failures is that ultimately they led to successes.
Yeah.
Because if you fail, unless you have the successes to tell you, well, it's not me,
Hmm.
right? You don't want to talk too much about your failure. That's understandable because it's not fun. A lot of self-doubt. It's not. You get you depressed. You do something, you fail. You do something, you fail. Right? It's depressing.
Yes.
So no, we're not. We don't like to fail, and
Yes.
that's why sales is so hard because in sales, most of the time you fail. You
Hmm.
don't get the purchase order.
Hmm.
The prospect picks someone else, or they don't like you, and they don't whatever. So the reason why I don't mind talking a lot about it is that I feel more and more confident with my successes, and
Hmm.
therefore I don't mind talking about my many, many, many failures.
So would you say though that every single one of your so-called failures have pushed you forward and have made you a more complex human being and more successful in the end on the things that you do succeed with? Or do you think that's a little bit of a myth? How do you feel about that?
I was actually, interestingly enough, I was reflecting on that question this morning while driving. And I was saying earlier the time I got fired,
Mhm.
and I got fired twice actually. One by the investor, it was the investor in my first startup, and the second time I was fired by my accent reduction coach,
Ah, that's
who
a good
said this
story.
is not going to work out. This is the two times in my life I got fired. All right. So the accent reduction coach was not traumatic, and he led to a good joke and so on.
Yes.
Um, now, getting fired from my first startup was dramatic,
Mhm.
and um, uh, to be completely honest, I don't think it led to good outcome for me. In other words, it got me to be a little traumatized, maybe too much, but very distrustful of investors.
Okay.
And therefore I built my company with that investors. And although it worked fine, the fact that I've been so scared, I guess, of being fired again mean that I never took investors. And I do believe that it's a limitation of mine, that I still, and I'm looking for investors, by the way, so for listening. I'm getting over it, but I don't want to be fired again. So now, and also I'm very confident about what I'm good at. And so now my rule, which is not easy actually, is that if I get investors, I want to keep control of the company. So the investors are supporting. They have to believe in me. They cannot fire me. Essentially, I keep control of the company, and that's a requirement which limits which investors I can get, of
Right.
course. But I still think that that failure, that situation of mine, ultimately led to a bit of a blockage on my part that itself is a problem. So sometimes what doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger. Sometimes, not that often, but sometimes it results in a residual sort of perception that
Mhm.
could be counterproductive. In my case, the fear of investors controlling my life. So essentially, I cannot have a boss. I cannot work with a company anymore. I exaggerate. If I really had to, I could. But my assumption is that it would be not a good idea for me to have a boss or a board that behaved like a boss, meaning a board that could fire me.
Okay. Uh,
Right?
fair enough. I understand that. So, but I think your fear is kind of what should I say? Has a good grounds. I mean that fundamentally investors will change the way you work. And but I also think that there's investment models that are just are fitted for what you need. So it's about the match, and it's always about the match in life. So sometimes it takes the right circumstances and the right time. And so I wish you the best of luck. And for all investors that are listening, I hope that one is out there right now for you, the match. But we talked leadership and we talked about what you don't like and what do you think makes you a successful CEO, and you founded the company in 2004. So you've been around for a little bit, and you have some of the largest pharmaceutical company on your roster. So let's make it clear, you've been tremendously successful. So tell us a little bit about your leadership style, and what is that like, and how does that direct a company and a team?
Yes. Now, the fact that I built my company over so many years without any boss or any investor mean that I could build it the way that works for me. So imagine that you're building the own car around you. Yeah. Gradually, it fits the way you drive, your skills, right? If you're right-handed, maybe a certain way. If you're right, so I build the company to fit my management style, and that's a privilege that not many people have. So I also find it very hard to describe your own style and be objective or being, but I gave a lot of thoughts to the question of leadership. And the first thing to understand about me is that I would argue I am not a natural leader. Let me say it. I want to be in charge. I want to be. I do want to be in charge. I want to be actually even the center of attention. To be honest, I like to be a center of attention. I like to be in charge. I like the glory in some ways, or the grittiness sometimes, of being the captain of the ship. Right? But I don't have the I would say usual style of a leader. So in other words, if and I hope I don't trigger anybody with that religious analogy. Okay. If the disciples had to elect Jesus, they would not have elected me as Jesus. But if I pick the disciples to work with me, I'm a perfect Jesus. That's the image I'm using about my leadership style. Yes. No, I think it makes sense. And it's funny that I actually heard the fact that the best leaders are not those that think they are good leaders. It has to do more about having a very clear vision. And I think there's a lot to say about understanding and knowing the path to getting there, which I think you have. And there's a lot of leaders out there, especially in very large organizations, that are good at managing people. And they do believe they have a vision, but it's really the vision of the company, and they are just very limited in their ability to mold it. So it's a very different style. And so I think the leader that we know is the one that is in large organizations, and your style is very different. And I would say someone like Elon Musk would have, and I know it might sound corny, but it is true. He's also someone that's very focused on a vision and autocratic at times, in his decision-making style. So I think there's two different ways of doing things. Thank you, Bruno, for this amazing chat. I learned a lot about you, and what I have to say is that I was very impressed with your sincerity and genuine approach. You have a lot to brag about and to be proud of, but you're very humble and also very interesting to chat with. So thank you for your time. I really look forward to chatting again, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to, I really want to join the Metaverse, hopefully one day with you. So maybe you'll take me on that journey. Well, thank you very much for that. I just want to say, if your audience would like to follow all the extraordinary things we do, and I do as well, follow us on social media. You can find it easily on pretty much all social media platforms. Yes, and I will definitely add some links for everyone to have access to that. And in addition, I guess everybody can find you on LinkedIn if they want to talk to you. And are you looking for anyone to join your team? And if you are, what kind of individuals make a good fit? So we're always recruiting. So reach out to me, reach out to my colleagues, both on our website, larvol.com, and on social media. And our current recruitment is across many elements, including the revenue side of the enterprise. So we're hiring for account executives, we're hiring in marketing, in business development, and also on the side of if you're super motivated by applying generative AI to cancer data, that's also an area, of course, we love to talk with you about.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Bruno. I wish you the best of success and luck in everything you're doing, and I'm watching you closely.
Thank you very much.